Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. And welcome to this Techstrong learning experience brought to you by AWS and LogsIO. My name is Cody, and we have a very exciting program lined up today. First, let me cover just a couple of housekeeping notes. Today's session is being recorded, so if you miss any of our discussion, perhaps you'd like to rewatch or share with a friend. The on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we conclude our live session today. If you look to the right side of your screen, you'll notice there are a couple of ways that you can engage with our panel. The first of which is the chat tab. So I'd like you to start warming that up for us right now. Let us know from where you are joining. We typically have people from all over the world, so we want to know from where you're joining today. If you have any questions for our speakers, the next tab over that says Q&A is going to be where you will send those in. So whether you have those at the beginning or the end of the program, send them in as soon as you have them, and we will try to address them. We do have a poll that will launch here toward the beginning of the program, so keep an eye out, and it is open-ended, so feel free to respond accordingly. If you check out the Handouts tab, there are 2 resources available for download there, so feel free to grab those at your own leisure. And of course, before we close out, we are giving away 4 $25 Amazon gift cards. So the topic of our discussion today is OpenSearch, taking observability to the next level. And I'm joined by Asaf Yigal, co-founder and CTO at LogsIO, and Mark Kriaf, Partner Solutions Architect at AWS. So Asaf and Mark, thank you both so much for joining me today. Mark, let's go ahead and get this kicked off.
Thank you, Cody. And hi, everybody. My name is Mark Kriaf. I'm a Partner Solutions Architect at AWS. And today with me, I have Asaf Yigal, from the CTO and co-founder of LogsIO. Asaf, do you want to take a second to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, everyone. My name is Asaf Yigal. I am the co-founder and CTO of LogsIO. Technology is at heart. I love playing with technology, and I'm excited for this webinar. We do a lot of work with OpenSearch as part of the contribution to the community and as part of what we do in the company, and I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Asaf. And without further ado, we'll start our conversation around the definitive guide to OpenSearch for observability. So before we start talking about OpenSearch, let's take a second and talk about the definition of observability. Observability is a measure of how well we can understand a system for the work it does. So getting metrics and information from infrastructure or from an application to gain better visibility on relevant information for that application. There are 2 parts. There are 2 parts when we talk about observability. There's the operational part and the business side, and it's kind of flows from operational to business. And I'll explain in a second. So when we start with visibility, from which involves around finding real-time issues and troubleshooting. And then we move all the way to the customer experience based on the issue we find and troubleshooting we do, to essentially bringing more value to the application. So if observability is so important, how do we make systems more observable? One of the ways we do that is through instrumentation, which is really an important concept. For example, we might have a situation where a user latency is high for a specific type of request. Where instrumentation can help is by giving us information that is impossible to know by observing the system from the outside. All this leads to data, and good data can help us with the technical shift to cloud native. It can help us improve debugging on applications. It can help validate designs with data points, so actual objective information around application design that we're planning or we're actually doing right now. More issues can be caught proactively. So when we have this visibility into an application or into a system, we are able to almost kind of predict issues that will occur, which leads us to innovation and improved feature velocity. So we're freeing up more time to develop new features. We're freeing time to do innovation on our application or our system. Good data can also help us with another aspect of moving to cloud native. So a cultural shift within the organization, which we talk about around when we talk about DevOps, when we talk about the cultural shift and moving to cloud-native infrastructure. Transparency and ultimately a shared understanding of how systems work together is the most important aspect when we have good data. Technical decisions are driven not by guessing or gut feeling, but are actual measurable metrics. And we have and also help develop a blameless culture. So these complex systems are connected in many parts. And when we have information, when we have this visibility into our application, and we have good data around it, we can shift ourselves to not a culture, not an internal culture that points fingers around who did what, but more of a let's help each other. With that being said, one of the features or one of the new services that AWS have is OpenSearch. OpenSearch is one of the ways to achieve end-to-end observability. It's a community-driven open source search and analytics suite based on Elasticsearch 7.10.2, and consists of the data visualization system and the OpenSearch and OpenSearch dashboards. Some of the main features of OpenSearch, wait a second, are natural language text search, high volume data ingestion, and analysis with time-based visualizations. One of the reasons to start using OpenSearch is it's 100% open source. So there's no vendor lock-ins and things like that. It's community driven, and it has extensive features based on the derivative of Elasticsearch. If we summarize the conversation around OpenSearch, OpenSearch gives existing users of open source Elasticsearch a path forward, and a way to continue getting new features and continue getting new security patches, for example. At this point, I would like to introduce the LogsIO team. So LogsIO is a strategic AWS partner that offers end-to-end open source observability solution based upon others on OpenSearch. Asaf?
Sure.
So while Asaf gets his screen share popped up, I did just load the poll up on your screen. Feel free to respond to this open form answer. It asks, do you have experience with using OpenSearch? Take it away, Asaf.
Thanks, Cody. So, hey everyone. So Asaf from LogsIO. Just a little bit overview about the company. We are, like Mark said, we're built on top of OpenSearch. Entirely. So what we offer is OpenSearch as a service, an observability solution that's based out of it. We're based out of the main company is out of Tel Aviv, Israel, and out of the Boston, US. We also have offices all over the world, and some of the largest companies in the world are using our solution, and I'll explain why. So our mission is taking open source and first of all, making it simpler. So we all been through that, and it's really, really fun, and it's great to deploy an open source. And OpenSearch is amazing. Its capacities that Mark shared about the ability to ingest high volumes of data, the ability to do fast searching, the ability to troubleshoot using it. But it's not always simple. And we have some capabilities that we've developed into it and extending the OpenSearch and making it way, way simpler. The other thing is we want to make sure that customers get more out of it. So they get more insights, they get more visibility, and last but not least is lowering the cost. So we have mechanism in here, which I will explain, and I will actually show you in a demo that you can figure out what is actually interesting and what is not interesting, and be able to save it in a much colder tier and much less expensive. The core challenge that we're coming to face, and again, this is based on a survey that we did. We just redid the survey, and unfortunately, the results are going in the other direction, is that we see companies are accumulating more and more data while getting less and less insights from the data. So the problem that we're coming to address is how can we collect less data? How can we make it more higher quality? And how can we get more insights out of this the data that we're collecting? we built entirely on open source and OpenSearch. The main reason we chose OpenSearch is because this is 100% open source. The only services that we offer, the only thing that we offer is only whatever is 100% open source. We're not offering anything which is not open source, even though it may be like community driven. Some companies they have like community driven, but it's not really open source. So what we do is we offer it only on open source, and which is easy to start, easy to build, but it is difficult to mature and to scale, and it is difficult once you try to tie everything together. It is difficult to kind of figure out how to connect all the pieces and how to connect logging with tracing information, with metric information, and stuff like that. I also want to say that we're also contributing to the OpenSearch and the other open source products that we're using, and we're excited with this partnership with AWS. I think this is really exciting to see how much is being developed over the past, I think, year and a half that OpenSearch has been an open source, and how alive the community is, and how good to work in this domain with them. Okay, so a few things that I want to lay out a few things that we bring into OpenSearch. First thing is around simplicity. That collecting data, and Mark really highlighted the basis of observability is the ability to collect data, the ability to extract the data from your devices, whether it's like AWS devices or your own code or a Kubernetes cluster, whether you're running it yourself, whether you're managing with EKS. It's difficult to be able to collect the data, to parse the data, to make sure it's all stored in the right way. So we have a telemetry collector. We're based, again, 100% on OpenTelemetry, which is an open source. We're also part of the contributors to OpenTelemetry. And this is some of the things that we add to OpenSearch. So as opposed to setting up your own OpenSearch, downloading the open source from the internet, or deploying it in a managed solution, and then having to deploy a collection mechanism and a parsing mechanism and everything, here it's like it's all in one box, and you can easily get it to work. The other thing we offer, we realize that a lot of the companies collect logs, but they're not actually logs. What they are is metrics. It's metric information. It's statistical information that you want to get trends over time, and you don't want to see every single log line. A good example of it is, for example, ELB logs. If you're using Elastic Load Balancer from AWS, it emits logs, which are all the access log. Everybody who's ever accessed the ELB. The reality is that you don't want to read every single log line. What you do want to know, you want to know the statistics about how many 200s am I getting? What's the response time of the ELB? What is the Error 400 that I'm getting? And maybe only filtering out the one that I need to see and turn the rest into metrics. So we know that deploying metrics and deploying metric solution is cumbersome, require a lot of thinking, as opposed to logging, which you just can log whatever you want. So what we have is a capability that you can turn log lines into metrics, and then you can actually move these log lines into a much colder tier. Another thing we've added on the open source is the data optimization hub. I mentioned in the beginning, and I think this is pretty constant with a lot of companies that we engage with when we ask them, how much of your data do you think is valuable? And usually the answer is between 10 and 30%. The rest, we know it's not valuable, but we have no idea what's in there. We give you that capability. We identify what data you're actually using, and you can filter the data that you're not using and move it to a colder tier. By that, saving a lot of money and also reducing the complexity of troubleshooting. Because if you want to troubleshoot and all the data is a mess, then you have a lot of data, then it really complicates things on how to do it. So this is the data optimization hub. Obviously, we move the data into colder tier, and we support S3 as the cold tier to store the data. But now you do want to search in the data, because sometimes you do want to retrieve from historical view what happened a week ago, 2 weeks ago, even what happened an hour ago, but you thought it was not interesting to begin with, and maybe it is not interesting 99% of the time, but now you want to see it. So we give you capabilities to search on top of your S3 and rehydrate the data within the OpenSearch clusters that you have, so you can continue the search, you can continue the visualization, you can continue a lot of progress and a lot of processing with that data. And again, the key thing here is the ability to store it in a much lower cost tier, and the ability to optimize the cost that you're paying and optimize also the value that you're getting. We also, as part of the data collection, we have an OpenTelemetry wizard. So configuring OpenTelemetry, configuring the YAML for OpenTelemetry can be quite cumbersome and error-prone. We realized that working with both ourselves and our customers, so we made sure to build kind of like an OpenTelemetry wizard. You can indicate what you want, you can indicate the sampling rules, you can indicate how you turn the tracing into metrics and stuff like that, and makes it simpler for you and easier to use and collect the stuff from the OpenTelemetry. Last but not least, it's a cool thing that we just announced. This is available if you use LogsIO today. We're kind of like enriching the data with our cognitive insight with ChatGPT. So there's been a lot of noise around ChatGPT and generative AI recently, and what we offer is we have a feature that's called cognitive insight. What we do is we scan the internet, so we scan forums and we scan different discussion groups for patterns around issues that happen in log. So we see a pattern that's happening in a log and there's discussion around it. We create a signature and then we search these signatures in your log line. So imagine you have all the question ever being asked in Stack Overflow or Ask Ubuntu or Server Fault or something like that. All these questions, we ask them, we ask your data all the time, and we highlight the things that you usually don't know about. We highlight different log lines that mean something that you should pay attention to. We rank these things. It's using machine learning. And what we've added recently is the ability to enrich the data with kind of ChatGPT for a potential solution. So we form a question, we ask the question, and you can see some examples of things that are being delivered from it. And obviously, the goal here is to extract as much value as we can from the data that you guys are sending. So if you want to learn more, and again, we're going to distribute this information, both you can find LogsIO on the AWS Marketplace, and you can also learn more about us and AWS, obviously. And what I do want to do now is kind of like show you like a quick demo, unless someone has any questions around it before I kind of like give you a demo of what we do.
So there was one quick question around beats. So probably like moving from Elasticsearch to LogsIO. Yeah.
So we do support beats as part of the way to collect the data. We do obviously offer, and our recommendation is to use OpenTelemetry to collect the data. Because you can, with one collector, collect both logs, metrics, and traces. It's easier to do it. It's easier to configure, and it's a lot more robust than using beats. But we do support beats as the way to collect the data. Share my screen again. Okay, so this is LogsIO, and what I want to show you.
1 second, Asaf, we're not seeing your screen.
Oh, it's loading.
No, can you try and reshare, because I don't see it shared at all.
Yeah, let me try and reshare. Let me try and share the entire screen. Can you see my screen now?
Not Not yet.
No.
One sec.
Okay, no, I think something is, I need to select a tab. Yeah, for some reason it's only sharing by tab. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, it's loading. Yes.
Great. So I'm going to go through a very quick overview of really LogsIO and stuff that we've added into OpenSearch. The first thing that I want to show you is the telemetry collector. Obviously, you can see that we can collect data, and you can send us data from hundreds of different connections and hundreds of different ways. But to simplify things, especially around the Kubernetes environment or AWS environment, so you can select Kubernetes, you can select EKS, and then it's really simple. You can say, hey, I want logs, metrics, and I'm just going to enable traces as well. I'm going to click next, and what we do is we generate a snippet that you run. You can run it on the Mac if you're running Mac, or on Windows if you're running Windows, or Linux, obviously. But what we do is we run a script that deploys a Helm chart to your Kubernetes cluster with all the information to be able to collect the data. So it's really literally one-click solution. If you want to look at it, you can see it's all obviously open source because we're using everything that we have as open source. You can look at the collector in GitHub, and you can also deploy it on your own. So you don't have to use the script, but it's really easy to collect all the information, literally with a click of a button. What you do is after you collect this information, you're going to see a screen that looks like this, and this is our Kubernetes 360. We just launched it in reInvent last year. And the goal of the Kubernetes 360 is basically to take the best of breed open source and bring them together and align all the data together. So I can look at the overview of the cluster, and I can see it by deployments, but I can also see it by nodes. So I have like a physical representation and a logical representation of how my Kubernetes cluster looks like. And I can see here my front-end deployment it doesn't have any failed pod, but it has like one pod with high CPU, high memory, high restart rates, and we also provide security risks on top of the Kubernetes. So I can see, okay, I have a high CPU, I can click on the CPU and I can see everything that's going on here, all the pods and all the deployments. So this is my front-end deployment, and I can see which one of them is consuming the CPU that I want. And obviously I can see the detailed metrics and the traces as well. If I want to look at or memory, if I want to look at memory consumption of each one of them, I can look at the pod view and I can look at the deployment view. Obviously, the other thing is like if I want to see pods that have like an excessive error rate in them, that the error rates increase, I can see what's going on here. I can quickly see the logs that are running on that specific pod. And I can also live tail directly to that pod. So I can click on live tail and I can see the logs coming directly from it instead of like SSHing into the machine or trying to use some other ways of collecting data. The other thing we have is security vulnerabilities. So this pod doesn't have one, but if I look at the security risk, I see that my front end has like 5 pods with security risks into them. We automatically identify vulnerabilities and we rank them. So these are things that are running within your code right now. So this is not like a pre-development or within the software development lifecycle. This is real production, and I can see the vulnerability, and I can click on it on the CVE and understand what's going on. We also rank it, obviously for severity, and you can see kind of like where is it happening, and kind of like what microservice or what image is running that is having that vulnerability inside. So this is the Kubernetes 360. Underneath all of it is the OpenSearch. So I can't really click in here because it's going to switch a different tab. But underneath all of it, there's OpenSearch and OpenSearch dashboards, and you can see all the logs that are coming from that specific environment. When you link it from the Kubernetes 360, then it's already being pre-configured with the right queries and with the right information in it. She does let me do that. So let me. So if I look in here and what I wanna do is, if I wanted to look into Kubernetes and I'm looking at the front end, and now I'm looking at deployment and I wanna see the traces of the deployment, I can click on the traces and it brings me straight to Jaeger within LogsIO. And now I can see all the traces. Everything here was collected, parsed, configured, linked automatically. So you don't have to do anything. You don't have to touch anything. You just need to deploy the agent and everything works. So I can see a specific trace. I can see the one that have errors in them. If I want to investigate it further, I can look and see how is it performing. I can see this one has an issue in it and it has an error, and I can dig into it and see what the issue is and how it's being what the error was. This one has an error. So this is something that we have into it. If I want to go in the Kubernetes and I want to see a specific metrics for a specific deployment, I can click on it, and what I see is I jump directly to Grafana, which is also powered by LogsIO, and all the dashboards are already pre-configured and linked, and you see all the information around that specific deployment. You can see the different pods that are running, the CPU and the memory of each one of them, and it already comes with preset configuration and presets alerts for all of it. So this is something which is really, really powerful in the way that we're seeing it. And last but not least, if you look at the logs and you click on the logs within the Kubernetes, what we do is we bring it to OpenSearch, and part of the OpenSearch, we already filter it for the right pod, and everything is already linked, and you already see the kind of like what's going on here on that specific pod, and you can continue to investigate. So these are things that we make. What I said in the beginning is our mission is making the open source simpler. So it's simpler by easier to configure, by easier to collect the data, by simpler to tie all the data and link it together, the logs, the metrics, and traces into one single unified observability using the best of breed. And it's simpler when it comes to troubleshooting and investigation, because you don't have the tool sprawl. You just go from your environment, and you can link everything in here is also linked to the metrics and linked to the tracing as well. So some of the capabilities I talked about, and I do want to show you here at LogsIO, is the data optimization hub. So we really see a lot of companies that send a lot of data, and they don't need that data. So if you click on the data optimization hub, once you send it to LogsIO, we can show you, for example, all the metrics that you're sending and are not being used. So you would be surprised how many metrics and how many dimensions people send that they're not actually using. Not using meaning it's not part of any dashboard, it's not part of any alert, it's not part of any visualization. No one ever searched for it in the discover view of Grafana, and you can see what's being used and what's not being used. It's really easy to filter, and I want to say, hey, I want to only see the not used, and I want to apply it. And then if I want to, I can simply just select all of them and select all the metrics that do this, and I can basically drop them. I can basically delete these metrics from this environment. So if I click on the drop here, what we're going to do, we're going to stop them on our end. So you would still be sending those metrics in. So if one day someone's going to say, hey, where's the metric that I'm sending? I'm looking for it, and I can troubleshoot an issue that I'm having right now. You can always go back and kind of like revive it, but you would not be paying for it, which is what's more important. It would not clutter your data, which is more important. It would not make the system slower, which is very important. So you get the benefit of getting only the data that you need at a much lower cost and with high flexibility. So this is the data optimization hub. The second thing is logs to metrics that I want to show. And like here, this is an example of ELB. I can look at the example and how it looks like. I mentioned in the beginning that usually logs like ELB are not. Nobody wants to see the actual logs, every log that happens, because they just very verbose. They cost a lot of money. They hold the system down. But this is kind of like our ability to do that. So you create a filter. I want to select only the ELB log, and then I want to create cardinality. I want to create dimensions. So the dimension is the load balancer, the request, the status code, the verb, the GeoIP country, and the user agent. These are the dimensions that I decided. And then I can select the metrics. I can select the to aggregate them, to do average, max, sum, and minimum, if I want to. And I can decide to do the count of the logs, and it's very simple. And now I can go back to the previous one and basically move these ELB logs into a colder tier. So if I do this, this is all connected, and now I can see all the metrics that are originating from this ELB. And to give it a minute to share the tab. Yeah, so I can just showing. It's going to take it a minute to kind of like run the query, but basically I can see the metrics that are running, and I can see kind of like what's going on here. And this one doesn't have the metrics in it, but this is the concept of kind of like turning the logs into metrics. So I don't know if anyone has any questions right now or stuff that they want to see on LogsIO.
There was a quick question about FluentD and support of FluentD.
Yeah, so FluentD is obviously supported, so I can look into it. Give me a minute. So if you log into LogsIO and you go to send your data, there's like hundreds of collectors in here if you want to do FluentD. So you can do FluentD as part of a daemon set in Kubernetes. You can do FluentBit. You can just do plain FluentD. So we give you a lot of capabilities to do it. You can do the EKS. You can do the Kubernetes over Helm with FluentD, but just generic FluentD, very simple way. We have an endpoint on FluentD and give you like a very simple kind of like an overview and see very simple setup instructions on how to connect to it. There is a plugin, LogsIO plugin. You set it up, you configure to send the data to us, and that's it. And we get the data.
Yeah.
So
this onboarding process is also something very, very nice, very clear, very clear and concise in a lot of cases, because as you mentioned, there's a lot of different tools, a lot of different ways to do things. And when you have this prescriptive guidance around how to create an integration, it's really, really helpful to streamline the whole process. So this is great. This is a great example.
Yeah, absolutely. This is really, really important. And we run into a lot of people that don't have a standard way of collecting the data. And some groups do it with FluentD, some groups do it with beats, groups do it in different ways, and it's really, really important to standardize. We really believe at the end of the day in observability as code. So everything that you deploy, every microservice you deploy, any pod that you run has to already have configuration for observability, and it has to be really, really standard. Otherwise, you don't know what you don't know. You don't know that you might be missing something from your observability, and then when you want to troubleshoot, then you can't find the data. So the data collection is really, really important to be able to standardize that. I would say, and like we do offer some ways, and sometimes we may offer more ways than we want to collect the data, and it's based on customer requests, and it's based on technology being used, and it's based on progress of different things that happen in different times. Fluentd was the key thing in Kubernetes environment, but now the telemetry is getting standard. Then I think our kind of like mission and our vision is that we can. It also really helps customers if in the future they choose to say, hey, I don't want to use LogsIO anymore. I don't want to use AWS OpenSearch anymore. I want to go to a different deployment of OpenSearch. I want to do something else. Everything is just going to work. And it's really, really important because the data collection tier and being able to understand what's going on there and how to configure it and how it's being configured and to make sure it's inclusive of everything that you do is really a key thing in observability. And I think you touched on it, Mark, as well in your presentation.
Yeah, and that's a very good point because OpenSearch, while it's still a community, it's a community-driven application at the end of the day. So you can still continue. There's no vendor lock. You can still use it whether you're using the LogsIO version, AWS version, or your own version. You can still use the same collectors. You can still use the same features. You just gain from each variation. With that being said, what are the is there an easy way to move off a self-managed version of Elasticsearch to LogsIO?
Yes, absolutely. It's very easy to move off of a self-managed version of Elasticsearch. We do it kind of like all day long. It's simply kind of like directing the logs to us. We have a way to ingest all the parsing rules and everything that you already have. We also, provide parsing as a service. So if you wanted us to kind of like parse the data, then we do parsing as a service for you. And this is something that we offer. So it's really, really simple to do that.
Nice. So it's really so moving from self-managed to LogsIO is simple. You don't have to. There's no manual configuration or things like that. It's just a matter of directing the data to LogsIO essentially.
Exactly. I think also part of the migration that we do, and we also have a lot of companies doing cloud migration, and usually they have an on-prem and they have their ELK stack, they have Elasticsearch, or even if they deploy OpenSearch. When we help them migrate to the cloud, which in the cloud, having observability is mandatory. You cannot run a cloud environment or Kubernetes environment without like having proper observability. We also help them clean it up. So we have a dedicated customer success team. We know the practices of observability. So it's really, really, and the product also does the majority of it by itself by highlighting what's being used and what's not being used. But this is a lot of the value that we bring into this as well.
Yeah, no, that's a very good point. That's a very good point. So if we summarize this demo and in your discussion, what are the key features in LogsIO that you think help improve observability and get to this end-to-end deeper dive observability of an application or an infrastructure?
Yeah, it's a good question. So first of all, is simplicity, and simplicity is around making sure that it's easier to connect. That you can have many more people use it within the organization. It's not like a secret of how many people can write a query and how many people can do things and build visualization. When it comes with a lot of pre-made content in it, you already connect the data. You collect data from AWS. You connect data from your cluster, from your own code. And it's already configured. The other thing is the ability to link things together, because usually when you get an exception, when you get an alert, maybe this alert is not the cause of the problem. Maybe this is a secondary cause of the problem, and the problem is way downstream. So the ability to link together and say, hey, I got this alert in this, but now I want to see the entire trace, and I see, hey, this started way before that because another service returned an error to me, and now I can see what's going on. The ability to really quickly identify. You see in the poll, 64% of organizations say that it takes them more than an hour to figure out to troubleshoot a problem. That's a lot of time, an hour. An hour, if you sit in an hour in a room, usually it's like a bunch of people, and you try to find something and you don't find it within a whole hour, it can be really frustrating. So we help you simplify the deployment. You don't need to maintain it. We help you run the cluster in a much more efficient way, both cost efficient and performance. We help you troubleshoot quicker by giving you capabilities within the product that you can troubleshoot quicker. And we do it all of it in a much, much lower cost than you would do it on your own. So you're basically getting a better OpenSearch deployment with more insights at a lower cost.
Yeah, that's a great point. There was another question here around the Chat GPT feature that you showed. I think it's very exciting. If I think about myself from previous roles, spending a lot of time in Stack Overflow, trying to find issues, trying to find solutions. How do you see this feature being used today at customers? What's your vision for that feature?
Yeah, so the feature that we released is the first one out of a whole plan of things that we want to do with ChatGPT. What we did is we extended our cognitive insights into showing insights from ChatGPT. I can tell you that when we first started the company almost 8.5 years ago, we ran like probably the largest ELK clusters in the world. It wasn't such a big thing back there, but we ran big clusters. And these clusters used to disconnect all the time. And we being kind of like engineers, we obviously kind of like blame AWS for it. And we saw that there's a connection issue or something like that. It took us about a month to find that there is a log line when the node start that says SKB rides the rocket, okay? It may be insane, but if you look for that on the internet, you're gonna find tens of thousands of discussion. It has to do with the scatter-gather protocol of the specific Ubuntu server, which is trying to optimize things, but it's really not a good thing for Elasticsearch cluster to run on top of it. So you wouldn't imagine everybody's using OpenSearch today, everybody using libraries that they didn't write, and their ability to know what's going on there is very limited. We're running hundreds, if not tens of hundreds, not thousands of different open source application and libraries that we didn't write. And we don't know how to configure. Like, we take the basic configuration, maybe we learn a few things, maybe when we have a problem we do it, but the ability to highlight what's going on inside only happens when you have an issue. What we do with the cognitive insight in ChatGPT, we search for the issues, we search for potential issues in your log file before someone else complains, before a customer comes and say, the system is not working. We already highlight that there is a potential issue here and you should look into it, and there is different ways to resolve it and address it. Like I said, this is the first, and what we're doing with ChatGPT. I think you're going to see a lot of adoption within the observability space with ChatGPT. And the vision that we have eventually is that you would be able to ask your data questions in a plain English. You can say, give me all the pods that have CPU above 80% and all the ones that have exception rate of 1% and that have a trace in them that is longer than 500 milliseconds. That's a question I can ask now, and I want to know it. I want to know the answer. I don't care that I don't want to get alerts because of the CPU spike, and I don't want to get alert because I have too many exceptions in the code. I want to get alert when there is a real problem, and the ability to ask kind of like this question and leverage generative AI to construct the answer. Just give me just find the host for me. Really gonna impact our ability to do that as the amount of data grows all the time.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Yeah, I think especially in observability solutions, especially when we move to cloud native designs, there is kind of overflow of information. You send a lot of data. Sometimes it's too verbose, and what happens is, whether we're putting alerts, whether we're just tracking, you see this toil. It takes a lot of energy to go through the information. And with these features that you highlighted, like moving unnecessary data to cold storage, we save money. And I'm really looking forward to see this ChatGPT implementation and getting more insights and make it a bit more streamlined to debug and spend time and spend less time trying to sort and shift and sift through your information, making it more streamlined to to debug issues. And at the end of the day, it's all about customer experience. When you as a customer, when you spend less time trying to fix a problem, your customer at the end of the day benefits from that. So that's really, really great. Yeah.
If you can come in the morning and ask your data, tell me all the problem that my customers had last night, and he can tell you, hey, people from EMEA were having a lag of latency of this and this, and this group of people had an error that you should look in. That's amazing. It's like, I mean, just tell me, give me some insights. And I think maybe it's not there today, but it is going to be there, and it's definitely, the technology is there. It's just a matter of training a model to do it.
Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. It sounds it sounds really, really, really amazing. Yeah. So I think that's about it from the question side. Let's see. So if we summarize our conversation, I think next steps will be to check out the AWS Marketplace offering for LogsIO. You can start a trial and test out LogsIO directly. And try it for yourselves. There's a lot of content that from AWS and LogsIO around is specific integrations like the recent Kinesis metric streaming that we launched, which was really helpful in terms of reducing costs and improving latency when we transfer logs. So make sure to have a look there and try the product for yourself. It's really exciting. And Asaf, thank you very much for your time today.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. Thanks.
Yeah. Cody, do you want to wrap it up?
Sure thing, Mark. And thank you, Mark and Asaf, both for joining us today. I really appreciate you both being here and diving so deep into this. So to our audience, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate your time. And I would just like to remind everyone that this session was recorded. So should you want to rewatch this or perhaps share with a friend, the on-demand recording will be made available shortly after we close out today. The 4 winners of our $25 Amazon gift card drawing are Pranav S., Michelle R., Bruce L., and Nilip D. So to our 4 winners, congratulations. Keep an eye on your inbox to claim that gift card. It should arrive in about the next 48 hours, but if you don't happen to see that email, please do check your spam folder in case it gets filtered out. I'd like to thank AWS and LogsIO for sponsoring our program today. And to everyone who has joined us today, we really appreciate your time, and we'd like to hear from you, hear some feedback about what you thought about our program today. So whenever we close out, there will be a survey. Feel free to respond accordingly and let us know what you'd like to see on upcoming programs. Otherwise, we hope to see everyone at a future Techstrong learning experience. Have a great rest of your day. And Asaf, Mark, thank you both.
Thank you, Cody.
Thanks. Thank you very much. Bye.